Frustrated again, honey? I watched her glistening red lips form the words and I couldn't take my eyes off of them, the flushful pucker moving against his ear. You had to know someone who would give the girl a good fuck, try to relieve some of that pressure. She probably hasn't gotten any since her daddy went to jail. She smirked, her tongue swiping at his lobe. She giggled, turning her face to stare at me as she laughed, her extreme enjoyment infuriating and causing the rage to pound in my head. "Fuck you, Hale, you fucking cunt drag whore," I shouted at her stupid, perfect face.
"That's it, Swan. Office, now."
Mr. Banner pointed to the door and I kindly stood up from my chair and walked past Rosalie, smacking her in the back of the head with my backpack as I made my way down the aisle. She didn't know shit about my daddy. None of them did, stupid ignorant motherfuckers. I was seated in one of the plastic chairs outside the principal's office, my knees pulled to my chest as I lazily etched black spirals into the white rubber of my shoes. This was a daily routine for me, waiting for the principal to finish her very important phone call so she could talk to me about my feelings and recommend I see the counselor. Her brightly colored business suit's a pathetic attempt to mask her complete ineptitude in disciplinary tactics. I mean, I knew she went easy on me because of my situation, but still, she was a spastic pushover and I knew she thought we had some sort of kinship, some kind of rapport, because of the amount of time I spent in her office. I knew what she wanted to hear, what would prevent my expulsion. Principal Cullen was so fucking predictable. Her door opened and I stood up to enter her office, but instead of her round curvy, overly made-up face, I was met with striking green eyes instead. The most beautiful boy I'd ever seen stood so close to me, I could smell the cafeteria pizza he'd had for lunch on his breath. His eyes stabbed into mine, bright effervescent jade that seemed to move with the light, as he stood there, breathing from his soft, pouty mouth. Recovering. I stumbled back. And they filed out of the office, a female mirror image behind him, followed by Principal Cullen, in a bright purple skirt and blazer.
Bella. Our standing appointment persists, I see,"
Principal Cullen commented. I was able to fully assess the twins before me now. They were similar in stature, thin, lanky frames, the boy slightly taller than the girl, her long copper hair waving down her back, and a small black headband pushing it away from her face. The boy's hair matched hers in color, brownish red stangled atop his head, the curls soft and messy, and begging for tending. Those were the only differences though, everything else about them matched identically, their facial features sharp and angular, same strong jaw, same pointy nose, same full, pouty mouth, their carbon copy eyes blazing with equal intensity. They were stunning. Both of them, and I knew I was staring but I'd never seen anything like the pair. I couldn't bring myself to look away from these glorious freaks of nature.
"Bella, this is my niece and nephew, Alice, and Edward. Children, this is my friend Bella. She spends her 5th period with me almost every day,"
Principal Cullen remarked, and the twins smiled eerie identical smiles at me, their mouths stretching at the same pace over their gleaming white teeth.
Hi, Bella,
they said in unison, their warm melodic voices in complete harmony. "Hi," I mumbled, irritated. Cullen had called me her friend yet enthralled with the song I heard pouring from the pairs of pouty lips.
"They're new to the school, Bella, just transferred from Chicago. They're going to be staying here for a while."
Principal Cullen smiled at the children in reassurance as they stood silently side by side, a picture of perfect decorum and respect.
"Oh. I just had a wonderful idea. Why don't you show them around the school? They're a bit apprehensive about joining our student body and I think you're just the person to set them at ease."
"Are you fucking serious?" I asked her, my face the picture of disbelief and horror. What the fuck was she thinking? I don't think she could have come up with a punishment worse than this. I'd take suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment, but this, wanting me to serve as the fucking welcome wagon for her freak niece and nephew was just hitting below the belt.
"Thank you so much, Bella, for your cooperation. I'm sure your permanent record thanks you."
Fucking manipulative bitch. Principal Cullen kissed Edward and Alice on the cheek, something I found highly inappropriate to do at school, and walked back into her office, the door shutting behind her with a sickening click. The three of us stood in silence, the pair of them staring at me, four identical eyes dissecting and drowning me in vacant thought. I blinked, breaking the connection before opening my mouth to speak. I guess we can't start with the science building," I mumbled, turning to walk out the office door. Edward rushed ahead, opening the door for me before I could reach it, his eyes stealing mine the whole time. He smiled as I passed, his brilliant pointy white teeth all evenly spaced. I couldn't help but grin back at the gesture, so old-fashioned and unheard of now. Alice wrapped her arm in mine, smiling at me as I flinched from the contact, her slender arm warm against my skin.
"Bella, my dear, you seem awfully angry, love. You really should engage in some recreational activities, exert some of that pent-up hostility. Let's take a hike instead. Our auntie just reads too much. We don't need it to, we need a sedative,"
Alice crooned in her sultry voice, steering me towards the forest, the green canopy shading the lush array of vines and shrubs that spread out behind the school. Edward rested his arm on my shoulders, his touch literally sending tingles down my spine, as he pulled out a silver flask from the pocket of his wool coat. He loosened the lid, offering the canteen to me first. I looked into his snowy face, a smirk upon his lips, as he shrugged, his eyes twinkling with mischief. I took the flask from his fingers and brought it to my lips, swallowing the crisp liquor, earthy and smooth, and I recognized the scotch at once, the apple tart burning in the back of my throat. We spent the afternoon amongst nature. Alice climbed a tree in her pristine attire, her Mary Janes and knee socks tossed aside as she lightly scaled the branches, her undies peeking out from beneath her wool skirt. She sat against the trunk, her lean bare legs straddling the branch.
"I love forks, Edward. Look at how well I can breathe here."
She inhaled sharply from her pronounced position, closing her eyes as she took in the crisp, September air. Edward settled on a large, flat rock, writing in a canvas-bound book, and smiling at me from time to time as I sat across from him. I couldn't help but stare, his face so unreal, so incredibly remarkable. I reveled in the small things, the flex of his jaw, when he was trying to concentrate, the crease of his brow, as he scrawled across page after page in celestial italics, the fluid sound of his pen on paper, and became lost in the drowsy patterns. I sat with my knees in my chest watching his pen loop, his soft and delicate fingers remarkably clean, the manicured nail beds deeply contrasting the strained tendons flexing as he gripped his writing tool. He hadn't touched me since we had reached the woods, and I sat, waiting for him to throw his arm around my shoulder or accidentally brush my hand. I visualized his mouth on mine, and I had to shake my head to free myself from this thought. It was the first time since my father had been convicted that I was actually interested in another human being, and not just a fuck to numb my soul, but the actual person before me. I wanted to know what he was writing, read his thoughts as he plucked them from his brain to place on paper. I wanted to feel his touch and enjoy his smiles. I took comfort in the fact that these two people knew nothing of my past, and therefore only judged me based on the present.
"I agree, Alice. The scenery is rather beautiful, especially from where I am sitting,"
Edward responded to his sister, his eyes scanning my face, and settling on my eyes as his mouth spread into a sly smile. He leaned forward to reach across the distance, lightly grazing my cheek with his gentle fingers. I gasped, turning my head into his touch, a blaze left burning across my skin.
"Yes, she is quite beautiful, brother, but there's no need for theatrics."
Alice laughed, her chime echoing through the trees as she closed her eyes and sang a quiet tune, the melody lulling in the quiet thick of the forest. Edward continued to hold me with his gaze, his hand at his side now and his face creased in frustration. "What?" I asked him, his disapproving features perplexing.
"Why are you so sad?"
He reached out this time to take my hand and bring it to his lips, the simple act so careful and deliberate. Befuddled and incoherent, I shook my head, and searched for the words to respond.